Hello everyone, and welcome to the Evangelist Nick Garrett channel. Today we continue our discussion on the 6th Holy Land Crusade. Back in Rome, Pope Honorius III died and was replaced by Pope Gregory IX, who pursued the threat to excommunicate Frederick II for his delay in crusading. He was likely unaware of the full depth of negotiations taking place between Frederick and Al-Kamil to gain back Jerusalem. Over the previous 150 years, Rome had initiated the Crusader spirit and time and again attempted to remove itself from temporal affairs. Now it was put to the ultimate test. What if the Church could have Jerusalem for Christendom, but not be in ultimate control over it, but concede that control to the Holy Roman Emperor, Frederick II. Even when Frederick learned the new Pope Gregory IX was willing to follow through on the threat of excommunication, his response was simple. Excommunication or not, he was going to crusade by his own standards. Obviously, the men had two different visions of what that crusade would be. As the time for the emperor's departure came close, Frederick fell seriously ill. However, he did recover enough to meet his crusading commitment and left for the Holy Land in 1228 AD. Pope Gregory, however, had written ahead to Acre, where the leaders among the Templars and Hospitallers were informed of Frederick's excommunication. They were told to stand down and refuse their services to him. Little did Gregory realize Frederick already had a plan for that, too. All the church had was words from its palace in Rome. Gregory was about to learn the extent of one's loyalty in the face of mitigating circumstances. Even with the papal communications to Acre, Frederick's reception was mixed but cordial. Those crusaders posted in the Holy Land from his kingdom sided with him. Germans, Normans, Italians, and the Teutonic Knights all pledged their support for him, whereas the others, for the most part, initially did not. Immediately, Frederick wrote to Al-Kamil accepting the previous terms to have Jerusalem. Al-Kamil seems to have hesitated. There could have been no confusion over what the terms were to be. Al-Kamil and Emir Fakhr al-Din and his very court had offered Jerusalem both during the Fifth Crusade and later. The Muslim source of the account seemed to indicate that all would go as planned, and the concession of Jerusalem and even some surrounding cities would be made and celebrated by the people of the Levant for a peaceful outcome. Catholic and Western secular sources seem to agree that there may have been some hesitancy on the part of Al-Kamil once it came time to deliver. At the time that Frederick sent word of his arrival in the region, Al-Kamil was busy besieging the stronghold of Damascus, where the sons of his brother Al-Muazzam was holed up. Al-Kamil then sent diplomats showering gifts upon Frederick. Camille's overtures were viewed by the emperor as a ploy designed to buy time. Frederick did not like being stalled. Accordingly, Frederick grew concerned. If Al-Kamil could secure Damascus, then he may have the military strength to expel Frederick by force from the Levant. There would go Jerusalem, Frederick's reputation, and he would return to Europe not only excommunicated, but likely threatened by a greater number of enemies on his border, along with papal armies, who at the moment were maneuvering against Frederick's Sicilian holdings. Frederick suspected this was Al-Kamil's intention. The Christians gathered to plan a strategy with Frederick at the head. They established a timeline to take Jerusalem before Damascus fell to Al-Kamil. He either wouldn't have enough time to withdraw and respond to Frederick, or would have to simply let Frederick take Jerusalem unopposed as promised. If Kamil felt he could not spare any of his resources from the fight in Damascus, that is. Meanwhile, any who were left opposing Frederick based on the Pope's orders abandoned the papal edict and eagerly supported him. Being impressed with his initiative, it hadn't taken long for those who had remained loyal to the Pope's directive to see leadership in Frederick that they sorely needed, and realized could finally set a legitimate move toward Jerusalem. The Templars and Hospitallers put their oaths to the papacy on the line and offered themselves to Frederick, eager to move on Jerusalem. Those Christian crusaders that had long been settled in the Holy Land realized the opportunity to retake Jerusalem might not come again. The opportunity was now, while her defenses were largely torn apart and the attention of the Muslim army was elsewhere. With great zeal, the Crusaders gathered at Jaffa, where the first Crusaders had turned from the seaside road toward Jerusalem back in 1099 AD to transport all the materials of their siege equipment. Recognizing the strategic benefit of Jaffa for the Christians and the value of boosting morale for the residents, Frederick restored the town defenses. It was in Jaffa that they staged and prepared their forces to take Jerusalem. Frederick banked on the fact that if he moved on Jerusalem, Al-Kamil would not pull his forces and abandon his siege of Damascus. He also banked on Camille's unwillingness to split his forces to stop Frederick's main body in the field. He thought that Al-Kamil would let him walk into Jerusalem unopposed. Frederick was banking on a bold certainty, but still prepared contingencies for all potential possibilities with great wisdom. There may have been strategy in Frederick's stay at Jaffa. He was giving Al-Kamil time to make up his mind, consider what he might do, and to consider what Frederick was up to. What historians have largely viewed as building up Jaffa for the benefit of Jaffa could have also been a fallback in case Al-Kamil called Frederick's bluff and approached for a fight. Frederick sold it as preparation for Jerusalem, whose defenses at the time were decimated. Yet at Jaffa, he could build up the town for battle there, make a stand against Al-Kamil, retreat by sea if things went poorly, or if Al-Kamil took the bait and abided by his pledge, walk over toward Jerusalem unopposed, and have Jaffa at his back if he needed a getaway plan. The fact that Jerusalem's defenses were in such disrepair actually helped Frederick. It was wise of him to realize making a stand there was futile. By staying away, it meant that the Muslims taking the city by force to defend it from the Christians would also not be an option, because they too would be defenseless there. Perhaps realizing after hearing of Frederick's plan that he meant business and that he would not be outmaneuvered, Al-Kamil sent Frederick another letter, not only giving up Jerusalem, but offering many more concessions. He offered Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Nazareth, and a 10-year peace. In return, Frederick had to ensure that the Muslims retained control of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He also had to guarantee access to their sites unmolested. And as an assurance of this, Frederick could not build up the defenses of the city again. Obviously, Kamil thought that settling the infighting and power vacuum among the Muslim rulers gave him more of a chance to consolidate power and face Frederick later than fighting on two fronts and watching the region devolve into total instability. There was nothing to be gained by the Muslims fighting the Crusaders at that time if they were willing to settle for one town that was increasingly more of a death trap than a strategically beneficial holding. Frederick agreed to the terms allowing the Muslims to retain their property of the mosque and agreed safe passage and peace in the city for Muslim pilgrims. With that, the historic Treaty of Jaffa was finalized. Al-Kamil's defenders rode from Jerusalem, just as Frederick the Templars Hospitallers rode into the town. It had been just over 40 years since Salah ad-Din had taken Jerusalem from the Christians. Now, ad-Din's heirs and successors were fighting themselves, while the Christians rode behind Jerusalem's dilapidated city walls unopposed. There at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Frederick II, the man who had been excommunicated by the Pope, took power as King of Jerusalem, surrounded by the men the Pope had ordered not to aid him. The coronation was anything but peaceful, however. It appeared that the tension between the church and the secular ruler would continue. Thank you so much for listening, and for subscribing, and for being part of this wonderful journey with me. I hope you'll tune in next for the last short episode about the Sixth Crusade, where we talk about the struggles that came with Frederick being King of Jerusalem and the tension that was built up with John I, and then we'll move on from there. Talk to you next time.